Sometimes, heroes don't wear uniforms or badges, they don't drive shiny rescue trucks or walk out of movie scenes. Sometimes, they wear worn-out leather vests, the kind that smell like smoke, steel, and the road. That morning began like any other. The sun rose slowly over an empty stretch of highway, brushing the sky in gold and fire. A roadside diner sat quietly by the shoulder, the kind of place where time felt slower, where the smell of bacon mixed with the sound of truck tires on asphalt. Inside sat a group of men most people would never dare to approach, the Hell's Angels. Big, bearded, inked, and rough around the edges. People saw danger in them. But not many ever saw the truth, the brotherhood, the loyalty, the buried hearts that still remembered what it meant to care. Then, just as laughter rolled across the parking lot and the sun caught the chrome of their motorcycles, it happened, a scream so sharp it cut through everything. The kind of cry that makes even the strongest men freeze. A little girl in a red dress burst into view, her boots slapping against the pavement, her hair wild, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her voice cracked through the morning air. "Please, they're hurting my mama. Somebody help." And in that single moment, when the world usually looks away, one biker stood up. What happened next would become a story that no one in that town would ever forget, a story of grit, mercy, and how sometimes the roughest souls carry the softest hearts. The diner fell into an eerie silence. Even the clatter of silverware stopped. The engines outside idled low, their growl fading into the background as everyone turned toward the child. Mason Cole, broad-shouldered and quiet, watched her from where he stood by his Harley. His hands were scarred, his face carved by years of hard roads and harder choices. He wasn't used to seeing fear in the eyes of someone so small. But when her trembling hand pointed down that lonely road again, he didn't hesitate. "Tank. Ryder." "With me," he said, his voice low, steady, commanding. Two of his brothers stood without a word. Within seconds, helmets snapped on, engines thundered to life, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of their machines. Dust kicked up like a storm as 3 Harleys shot down the road, cutting through the morning calm like black lightning. Back at the diner, the little girl sat wrapped in one of the biker's jackets, so big it nearly swallowed her. She pressed her small face against the window, watching the red taillights fade into the distance. The diner's regulars sat frozen, coffee forgotten, breaths held. Down the road, the air thickened with the smell of gasoline and pine. Mason's jaw clenched tighter as they neared the trailers. From a distance, they could already hear it, shouting, a crash, the muffled sound of someone crying. Mason braked hard, dust flying around them. "Tank, around back. Ryder, door with me," he ordered. The moment his boots hit the dirt, everything slowed. The door wasn't even locked. Mason pushed it open, and time stopped. Inside, chaos. A woman, her face bruised, her lip bleeding, was pinned against the wall by a man twice her size, his eyes glassy with alcohol and rage. The bottle in his hand caught a ray of sunlight right before Mason caught him. He grabbed the man's wrist mid-swing and twisted it until the bottle crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 glittering shards. Tank and Ryder pinned him down without hesitation, their boots pressing the fight right out of him. Mason stared down at the shaking woman. "You okay, ma'am?" he asked, his voice gentler now, still rough, but full of something else, respect. The woman nodded, breath ragged. Her name was Carla. Tears carved lines down her cheeks as she whispered, he just got out. I didn't think he'd find us." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone must have called it in. When the police arrived, Mason and his men didn't move. No running. No excuses. Just 3 bikers standing in the yard, silent, hands raised. Behind them, the little girl, Hannah, ran straight into her mother's arms. One of the officers recognized Mason. Everyone in the county did. He'd been trouble once, but that was a long time ago. Now, as the handcuffed man was dragged away, Mason simply watched in silence, the wind tugging at his vest. "You did good, kid," he said quietly to Hannah, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You were brave. Real brave." The girl's tears eased into a shy, trembling smile. Mason lifted her onto his Harley, adjusting a helmet that looked far too big for her head. They rode back to the diner slowly, sunlight glinting off the chrome, the noise of the engines no longer fierce, but steady, like a promise. When they returned, the small crowd outside the diner parted. People stared, at the woman, alive, at the child, safe, at the bikers, unflinching. Mason helped Carla off the bike, his movements slow, careful, almost reverent. The diner's owner came forward, blanket in hand, voice soft. "You folks come on in," he said. Carla tried to thank them, but her voice broke. Mason just shook his head. "You don't owe us thanks, ma'am. She made sure we came." He nodded toward Hannah, whose small hand clung tightly to her mother's sleeve. One by one, the Hells Angels slipped off their jackets and draped them around the two, a quiet, wordless gesture that carried more warmth than any speech ever could. Even the police officers standing nearby turned away, pretending not to see the tears that glimmered in the corners of their eyes. That moment, the sight of a gang known for rebellion and fire standing in silent solidarity with a mother and child, burned itself into the town's memory forever. By noon, the story spread everywhere. People passing through stopped at the diner just to shake their hands. Strangers paid for their meals. Reporters called it the day the Angels lived up to their name. When someone asked Mason later why he risked it, he only said, "You don't ignore a cry like that. Doesn't matter what colors you wear, some things are just human." In the weeks that followed, life began to change for Carla and Hannah. The town came together, furniture donations, groceries, even a small apartment above the florist downtown. And every Sunday morning, the roar of Harley engines echoed down Main Street. Mason and his brothers always came by, groceries in hand, a few jokes, sometimes just silence. They'd sit in that same diner, coffee cup steaming, the sound of Hannah's laughter filling the air. Months passed. Spring crept back across the fields, melting the last of the frost. One bright morning, Hannah ran across the diner's parking lot, clutching a piece of paper covered in bright crayon colors. "A Mason. Look," she shouted. He crouched as she held it up, a drawing of motorcycles, a little girl in red, and a big man kneeling beside her. "This is us," she said proudly. Mason stared at it for a long time before folding it carefully and slipping it inside his leather vest. "That's going with me wherever I ride," he said, voice low but thick with emotion. Hannah grinned, and for a brief second, the whole world felt right. Sometimes, kindness doesn't come dressed in white or wrapped in perfection. Sometimes, it rides on two wheels, smells like gasoline, and carries a heart that still remembers what it's like to hurt, and to help. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, because in a world quick to judge, stories like this remind us that even the toughest hearts can hide the deepest kindness. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were one of those bikers?